back here at the Isaac Lightner farm, and as promised a few weeks ago, we were going to take a look inside the farm today, inside the farmhouse rather today, with the owner and proprietor, Eileen Hooper, and then Eileen is going to tell us all about the inside of the house, the different rooms of the house, and what it's used for today. So let's go ahead and go on into for an exclusive look inside the Isaac Lightner farmhouse. Hello.
Hi, welcome to the Lightner farmhouse. My name is Eileen Hooper. My husband and I have been the proud owners of this property for 9.5 years. We came here in 2004. Come on into the parlor. Let me show you some of our history. We are a 7-room bed and breakfast. Very busy this year, as you might imagine, with the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. And I always bring our guests into this room first because I like to give a really brief history of what this house is all about. And I will start you with that, just as though you were checking into the bed and breakfast. You see above the fireplace here a wedding portrait of Isaac Lightner and Barbara Bear Lightner. They were married in 1830, and that's their wedding portrait. And then when you look slightly to the right of that, you see a photograph of Mr. Isaac Lightner around the time that he built this house. He and his wife had actually purchased this property in 1841. I'm going to show you that deed of purchase in a few minutes when we move to the next room. And when they purchased this 140-acre farm, there was already what he called an old house here. It was a white frame house. I'm just guessing it may have been log that was covered with white clapboard siding. But he moved his family into that old white house, and he and his wife had 11 children here on this farm. 2 of them died young, one in infancy and one at age 1. But they raised 9 of their 11 children right here on this property, not necessarily in this house, but on this property. And then in 1862, 1 year before the Battle of Gettysburg, Mr. Lightner tore down that older house and built this beautiful new brick home. A lot of our guests wonder why Mr. Lightner would be building a new house in 1862, sort of in the middle of the Civil War. And my comment is that no one in Pennsylvania expected that the Civil War would come to Pennsylvania. People were not building beautiful new homes in Northern Virginia in 1862. It was dangerous there, and the war was being fought there. But we really were quite, or I should say relatively safe here in Adams County. Of course, it didn't work out that way. And at the end of the second day of the battle, this property became a hospital for the Union Army. It was the 1st Division of the 1st Corps of the Union Army that took over this property. Mr. Lightner and his family had gone to Littlestown on July 1st to flee the army, which they said, his daughter Barbara said that all night long on that night of July 1st, they heard the wagons rumbling by on the highway, and they knew the army was on the move. So early on July 1st, they packed up and headed to Littlestown to safety to stay with some family. But on the evening of July 2nd, Mr. Lightner was heading back to check on his property, as we all can imagine a property owner would be concerned. And as he approached this farm, Confederate soldiers stopped him. Now, at this point, he didn't know it had been turned into a Union hospital, but Confederate soldiers stopped him and said, "Get off your horse, we're taking it for the Confederate States of America." Mr. Lightner said, "Can't you see I'm an old man and I need my horse?" Ironically, he was only 54 years old at the time, so he really wasn't all that old, but he played the old man card and won out on it, and the Confederate soldiers allowed him to keep his horse. Well, by the time he arrived here at the farm, again, this is according to his daughter Barbara, the Union Army was already setting up a hospital here. Mr. Lightner's family did return from Littlestown, and they all helped take care of the Union soldiers. Now, if you look at this room today, and specifically if you look at the floors, you can see that there do not appear to be big bloodstains on the floor. Isaac Lightner's daughter Barbara said that the floors were originally soaked with blood, and these front two rooms were the rooms that were used as the operating room. Mr. Lightner wrote that the Army had taken both the kitchen table and the dining room table and used both of them as operating tables. And then he put a comma in there saying, thereby rendering them unusable.
Now, I do have a couple questions
Sure.
for you, Eileen. The first one would be the fireplace.
This is not original.
That is not the original.
This was, there was a fireplace there, but the house underwent a huge restoration around 1960.
Okay.
Luckily, the man, and that was Dr. Carol Voss, some of his family is still here in the Gettysburg area. Luckily, he did not ruin the house by any means. He did a wonderful restoration so that he saved the floors, he saved the doors, the woodwork, the house, even the windows. The windows are original hand-blown glass. So Dr. Voss did a terrific job. For some reason that I don't know, this fireplace was replaced. This is not original. This is a 1960 fireplace in the location. The mantle and the face of the fireplace, they may be original. I don't know. But you can see that the brickwork and the actual fireplace opening are new.
My other question was that the gentleman in the picture frame there.
Yes. Oh, what a story. What a story. This is John Chase. He was a soldier from Maine, and he was left for dead on the battlefield near Culp's Hill. What had happened was a canister exploded. He was artillery, and a canister exploded. So this is an injury from friendly fire, not from enemy fire. And he sustained 48 wounds from that canister exploding. He wrote later on that his left eye was immediately put out. But he was left for dead on the battlefield. And then when the burial crew came and they were putting the bodies onto the wagon for burial, he let out a sound. He moaned, and they said, this one isn't dead yet. So they brought him out here to the Isaac Lightner farm. The men were triaged in the forebay of the barn. So they were literally laid down on the ground in front of the barn, and then one of the surgeons would go out and inspect them. John Chase remembered the surgeon saying, let this one finish off dying. And he was left out there on the ground for 2 more days. Well, he didn't die, so they brought him in here and fixed him up, and he actually lived to quite an old age.
And it's very interesting that I noticed that picture because I had earlier did a video from the main battery of which he was a member of on Stevens Knoll.
Yes.
As you said, he received 48 wounds from that exploding shrapnel, which is the most wounding of any soldier, North or South, during the American Civil War in any one particular battle, or in all, 48 times by one person. And he stayed here in his.
He did. He wrote in his, and I don't know if it was a published autobiography or if it was just a letter he had written, but anyway, he said that he spent some time in the Lightner house.
Wow, it's an amazing story.
It is an amazing story. Okay, I think we'll move over to the breakfast room.
Okay, and this has been the Next part in our series on the Isaac Lightner Farm inside the parlor on Gettysburg.
Hey, I'm here on
Battlefield,
Stevens Knoll here, and I'm at the battery of the Stevens Battery Monument. And one of the questions I get asked the most is who sustained the most wounds at the Battle of Gettysburg? And the answer to that question was a man named John F. Chase, who is a cannoneer in Stevens Battery under the command of Greenleaf T. Stevens. Here at the Battle of Gettysburg, not only did he receive the most wounds at the Battle of Gettysburg, but he received the most wounds in any one battle in the Civil War. He was wounded 48 times here at the Battle of Gettysburg, standing here in this position, and actually, more specifically, nearby where this boulder is on the ground. Thus, the reason it's marked by a flag. This is actually named the Chase Rock, and it's going to be part of our Secrets of the Battlefield series. And John F. Chase was wounded 48 times at the Battle of Gettysburg. It cost him his left eye and his right arm. He also would be later awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions at Chancellorsville, but he was wounded here 48 times. Of course, being hit that many times, there is very, very, very slight chance of survival. And actually, men found him laying here and brought him over to a dead cart and placed him on the dead cart. And it wasn't until he was on the dead cart that someone realized that he was alive. And of course, he survived the war and would later come back to Gettysburg and get his picture taken here next to this rock. So this has been Secrets of the Battlefield, the John F. Chase Rock, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. I'm standing here in the breakfast room of the Isaac Lightner Farmhouse, and we're going to take a look at this next room here, and Eileen is going to tell us all about it. So, Eileen?
All right, well, now we are in the other of the two front rooms. The architectural style of this building is federal. We're definitely, in 1862, we're definitely at the end of federal style architecture, which is my favorite. And so I'm very glad Isaac Lightner used it to build his house. He was an older man, and so he was probably using older style architecture. But again, I personally am glad that he built it the way he did. The fireplace in this room is original. It has not been altered. And there would have been fireplaces on the gable ends in each room. This is a 4-square house, 4 rooms on the first floor, 4 rooms on the second floor. So each room would have had its own fireplace on the gable end of the house. Now there are a couple interesting things in here. First of all, this is where we serve breakfast to our overnight guests. Each morning we do a full cooked breakfast between 8 and 9 a.m. and our guests are invited to come on in and have breakfast with us. Because this is one of the 2 original front rooms, this would have been either the dining room or the parlor. We're using it as the dining room today. There are a few old documents in here that are quite interesting. This is the first and quite amazing to me. You don't often find an 1862 home that has the original deed of purchase hanging on the wall. This is Isaac Lightner's deed from 1841 when he and his wife purchased the property. The handwriting is, very ornate and hard to read, but it clearly tells you that it was the 30th day of March, 1841. And as you read through it, you see that he was purchasing 140 acres from Peter Fry. Sad to say, his wife was making an X. No, I'm sorry, that's Peter Fry's wife who signed her name with an X. So she was not able to sign her own name. A couple other things that are in here. We have 2 Civil War newspapers that are framed. They're just intriguing to look at. One is the Liberator by William Lloyd Garrison. That's the abolitionist newspaper, and it talks about the trial of John Brown. And the other one is front page from the New York Times from November 1st, 1859.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's also the trial of John
Oh, that's
Brown.
the trial of John Brown. Let me look at the Liberator. I may be wrong on that. Yeah, that is, well, a little bit here, but a couple different subjects.
November 13th, 1863, so it was just before President Lincoln's visit here to the town.
It was.
Now, I had one question for you about the deed and the name Lightner. There's another Lightner just down the road during the Battle of Gettysburg on Route 97 here at Baltimore Pike named Nathaniel Lightner. Were there any relation between the Lightner farm families?
You know, we have no definite information except that they were not brothers. Nathaniel was not Isaac's son. Nathaniel was approximately 12 or 14 years younger than Isaac. So there's no direct relationship. They may have been cousins, we don't know, but it's not the same direct family.
Okay. And this room also was used as an operating room. You said the front two rooms.
It was, and as a sideline on this, we had been told sort of family folklore and stories that came down through the years, mentioned that Mr. Lightner pulled up those blood-stained floorboards and replaced them with new boards. So that was the story that had come down the line. But about a year and a half ago, my curiosity got the better of me, and I ordered luminol over the internet. Luminol is that CSI substance that you spray on the floor, and then you use a black light to see if blood stains are present, and there are no blood stains on these floors. So that folklore, that family story was correct. Mr. Lightner replaced these floors.
Okay. Excellent. So we have take a look here at the breakfast room here at the Isaac Lightner Farmhouse. And this has been the Isaac Lightner Farmhouse, a look inside on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.